And you're very welcome to another edition, well, the very first edition of 2024, of course, of the Solid Foundations Property Podcast. Hopefully you're well. Hopefully you enjoyed the break. And, well, someone who really enjoyed the break, oh, of course, she wasn't here for her last interview with Ruth Smith. She is the one and only Lisa O'Reilly. You're very welcome back, I should say, Lisa. First of all, let's get everything out of the way. What did you bring me back? And I don't want a teddy or anything like that. What did you get me?
A kangaroo.
A
So I've
kangaroo.
just come in the back room back here, and I'm going to bring it over to you and send it up to you there next week, Pauric. So yeah, kangaroo.
Can't wait to see it. Can't wait to see it. It's going to be life changing. Look, Lisa, I'm only slagging you. It's good to have you back. It's good to suppose the break over Christmas gets everyone refreshed and rejuvenated for 2024. But of course, how was the end of 2023 for you? So today's podcast, what we're going to do is we're going to reflect on last year, look forward to this year, and we're going to look forward to the markets in Northern Ireland and in Southern Ireland as well. We've got a special guest on with us for today's podcast. We have the one and only Mr. Paul Kennedy. If you don't know Paul, if you're in property in Northern Ireland, where have you been? He's all over the place. He's on Instagram, he's Facebook, and he's Paul. I don't know where you get all the energy. You've twins as well, so and literally you're just back in the door, got the dinner into you, and you were working extremely hard all day, weren't you?
Yeah, I've got an HMO, a couple of HMOs that we're trying to get over the line here in the next few weeks. So a lot of deadlines to hit. So all hands on deck at the moment. And yeah, just juggling that with family and all the other commitments that we know we have. So yeah, just trying to get these cash flowing as quick as possible is what we're at the moment.
So we'll delve into that very shortly indeed, Paul. But suppose 2024, as we look at both markets, the Northern Ireland market and the Southern market, first of all, suppose a lot of people are, look, genie in the bottle time, waiting for this elusive crash that's going to come. Is it going to come? What way is it going to be? And are you seeing any of that in the market as such, Paul? And before we actually do that, maybe what we will do is just recap on who you are, maybe what you've been doing over the last number of years, because you've been doing a lot in the property circle. So tell us a little bit about yourself and tell our listeners, more importantly.
Yeah, and Paul Kennedy, I live just outside Belfast. Very blessed, as Pauric said, with twins just about to turn 4 in the next month. They get dragged around all the sites with me, and my wife Rachel is all in with it as well. So we're all going at it, hammer and tong as a family, really. Started out property really about 7 or 8 years ago. Was very blessed to inherit property through family. And sat on it for a few years. Didn't really know what I was doing. Thought it was great getting a few pound in the door. And then what really changed was a couple of years later, we went to Belfast Property Meet, which I highly recommend to anyone, either local property meet, Northwest, it's Belfast or one Dublin or wherever you're based. But we just heard a few things that night and realised we could really accelerate our journey. I sort of saw it originally as you had to buy every house outright. You're going to run out of cash very quickly, etc., etc. So that was the start of it. Went and bought another one or two, and then heard people speaking about HMOs and thought that would suit my skill set quite well. I'm very hands-on. Myself and my wife built their own house a number of years previous to that, and just enjoyed the process. And then through kind of COVID times, I got interested in property sourcing. I was trying to buy a couple of my properties myself and was nearly getting more than I needed myself. And a few people started asking me, I want to buy houses that you buy. So I went and got myself trained and certified and on all above board on sourcing. And as I run a sourcing business and have done for the last 3.5 years. It's been relatively successful for me, and that keeps my hand in the kind of in the day-to-day of the markets and what's happening and what I see. And then on the side, then we do run, this is our own portfolio. We're building mostly HMOs and a couple of Airbnb SA properties as well. So we've been pushing that quite heavily. Started out kind of doing one at a time, and now we're kind of up to doing 2 and 3 at a time. Just to try and accelerate our journey into property and build our portfolio. So That's been pretty busy for us. As I say, trying to finish 3 at the moment, and have another 3 coming. Excuse me, another 3 coming through legals here in the next couple of weeks, and that will be us into 2024. Really, really pushing on. So, yeah, lots going on, but wouldn't have it any other way is maybe the best way to put it.
Yeah, there's a huge amount of aspects there, Lisa, going on. Paul's absolutely flying it with a number of HMOs, the SAs as well. And I suppose we are going to touch into that HMO strategy on today's podcast as well. We are reflecting on the 2024-2023 market, and just suppose 2023 was what it was. 2024 looking forward to it, but as we continue looking at, I suppose, looking forward more so than looking back. Predictions last year, suppose, Lisa, a lot of people indicated that there would be a decline on things, especially in the Republic, maybe not as much, but in the UK and Northern Ireland, there was. That wasn't really reflective in the Republic of Ireland last year.
Can you hear me there? Sorry, I just want to apologise for the mess up earlier. Can you hear me now? Yeah, everything's good. Okay.
We've got you.
Oh, okay, great. Yeah, so I suppose, look, we last year in the Republic of Ireland, I think we built just around 30,000 homes, and that was the government's target last year. But it's just simply not enough. With the net immigration, the population is just kind of going up and up, and we need about 60,000 new kind of homes for this year. So and every year for the next, I think it's 10 years, I think they're predicting, and we're going to need 60,000 new homes every year for the next 10 years. But I suppose, look, that's, unless they do something radical, it's probably not going to happen. And I think HMOs are actually a really good strategy in when there's a housing crisis. So yeah, like I don't see property prices crashing, certainly not crashing. I do see that there's a lot of landlords leaving the market at the moment. And possibly if your house or your apartment is typically an investor property, possibly those kind of property prices might kind of stagnate, decline a little. However, if it's a home that can be, typically for a family, then no, I think the demand is really strong, and I think the prices will stay the same, and if not, like, increase. There's a big kind of what government's going to get in, and we're all kind of expecting next year that possibly Sinn Féin might come in some capacity. And when they do, that's going to be even a bigger impact on landlords. And I think there's a lot of landlords exiting the market ahead of possibly when they come on board,
Yeah, definitely. And suppose in Northern Ireland, Paul, up where we are, there is, it's probably one of the most regions that grew within the UK last year for figures, actually, from that point of view. Rents have also grew like they have in other areas as well. And look, there is that aspect as well, suppose, in Northern Ireland, that some landlords are leaving the market because of the interest rates, as Lisa, well, they don't have as bad interest rates down south, particularly. It just depends if it's limited or if it's if you're buying it in your own name, that particular property. But you're up on 7-8%, and suppose some landlords are selling up. Maybe that would be the case as well in Northern Ireland, but maybe not as many as the Republic, Paul.
Yeah, I think you see mainly through the sourcing business, I would kind of have a wee bit of an idea of what's going on, and you do see a healthy stock of properties going through at any one stage. Certainly, January, back end of January into February, speaking with agents, they do see it's always a busy time of the year when people kind of, not even just residential, but investor properties as well. They just maybe reconsider. It's maybe taken a year really or more for some of the interest rates to really hit some of those landlords, that they've maybe been on a longer term fixed rate down at the 1% and 2%, and maybe when it's coming into the 4% and 5%, maybe 6% now, when they're having to remortgage, it's starting to question a few things, or maybe do they want to get out? But equally, the rents you just see the rents going up and up and up, and that that does take the sting off some of the some of the higher interest rates. Equally, just within the last 1 to 2 months, we've started to see the interest rates kind of dropping, and I think some of the providers actually egging each other on, and a bit of competition driving it down. So it's down at the 4% and 5% now, as opposed to maybe the 6% and 7% that it was at sort of 6 and 9 months ago. So certainly when you're stacking deals, they still make sense. As I say, slightly drop in mortgage rate helps, and the increased rents certainly ensures that the figures on a good deal will still stack as a good investment for most investors.
Yeah, and suppose that's the challenge, Lisa, for investors, is seeing getting more creative with their actual property that they have. Is there any trends that you see that maybe in the Republic that maybe they're not doing specifically? Maybe they should consider instead of selling up.
Well, yeah, it's a very highly regulated market in Ireland. So, in terms of creative strategies like short-term rentals, you're not meant to do it now without planning permission, and it's going to be more heavily regulated even going forward. Co-living HMOs is probably an area that people could look into. But I suppose, like you probably know, Paul and Pauric yourself, that HMOs are not for, say, the faint-hearted. They're not for, say, someone who has a full-time job, maybe, because there's a lot more work involved with HMOs. So in terms of like kind of creative strategies, like in terms of tenant types, unless you're going to go down the HMO route, I don't know, is there too many opportunities because of all the regulations that we have in the south? Equally, Paul, I think you mentioned your interest rates are actually going down in Northern Ireland, but in Republic of Ireland, I suppose we're following the ECB, and we've not had any decreases yet. So we're still at a buy-to-let mortgage now, with ICS or Finance Ireland is between 7.25 and 7.45%, up to 70% loan to value. So we are still experiencing the high interest rates. I expect the interest rates, they have controlled inflation now, and they've acknowledged that, really they could start reducing the interest rates. However, we don't expect to see that until the later half of 2024. So at the moment in Ireland, we're very much like high interest rates, all a little bit nervous when and if Sinn Féin come in. And I suppose there's a lot of kind of like people just like a little bit kind of cautious, but then that brings opportunities then. So if you can think outside the box and you can go down maybe the HMO route, that does bring opportunities as well.
Yeah,
because everybody's kind of running the other way.
And that's something we're going to discuss tonight, and it's good to have Paul on there. And as I say, we have our own experiences, Lisa, but Paul in Northern Ireland has his finger on the pulse quite a bit, Paul. And we're going to delve deeper into a number of those particular deals that you've been doing, and you see. Suppose tell us about some of them that you've done, because I know our listeners will be really interested to hear about them.
Yeah, and we did it in a bit of a stepped approach. We didn't jump 2 feet into a 9-bed all-en-suite or even a 5 or 6-bed all-en-suite. So the first we did was kind of maybe your bread and butter. Maybe the most, as Lisa says, it's certainly not straightforward, but the most straightforward if you're trying to get started. So it's your usual 4-bed property, pretty poor condition, and buy it and convert it into a 5-bed. And just, get all the regulations in place, split your bathrooms, no en-suites in that one. Do all your search, your certificates. It was still now back to brick, replumb, rewire, replaster, because it was a pretty poor property. But that was kind of the start of it, and learnt a bit about budgeting for bigger projects. Can't say we stayed on our target budget, but not many people do in their first kind of big project. From there, then we stepped into our next one, which was 5 beds, and 3 were en suite and 2 were shared, top floor shared. So kind of kept the options open there for different tenant types. And then some of our more recent ones, just finishing a 6-bed all en suite. So that is 2 feet all in. No going back in that one. So
Completely under the table there, eh?
Yeah, we're not holding back. And then some of the more recent ones we've been doing have been a mixture. Some we've pushed into new markets, some that's new for us and probably new for Belfast in general in terms of location. So we're just trying things there, different price point, different spend, for example, maybe a bit more basic, a wee bit more basic fit and function, but certainly the numbers still work there. So we'll learn. That's going to go on the market in the next 2 to 4 weeks. So I think our product's good enough that will bring the clients and the tenants to that location. And then the next year are just going to go back to where we know in the sort of the more East Belfast, the tried and tested areas in the 2024. So yeah, a real range of stuff. And it's important just to make sure whatever you do, what you probably is all en suite, is it not, is it commercial, is it residential, the numbers have to work and you have to know your tenant type and what they're going to pay and what they want. And then that will kind of guide you and lead you what you do or what you don't.
Kind of tenants, what kind of tenant kind of caliber do you go for, Paul? Is it like young professionals or students or
no,
who do you kind of...
We stay away from the student market. I think Belfast struggles still yet in terms of, you see students a big thing in the mainland where they actually pay big rent because they want nice rooms. There's not so much of that in student world in Belfast as yet. I've seen some people doing very well out of it, and I think that's where the growth is. But we stay mainly into the young professional market, so it's kind of like 22 to 35 market, plus or minus. So people in that range typically, have a bit of income, but a disposable income, don't really know where they want to be permanently. They want to settle down, maybe they want to buy a house, don't know if they're going to be moving about. Maybe they're in their first job and just trying things out. So the 6 month kind of just arrive with a bag on your back type setup of an HMO gives them that flexibility. Now, obviously, they pay a premium for that, but they're happy to, because in 6 months' time they don't like it, or suddenly their job's moved, they want to try something else.
I suppose, Paul, on your socials, and that you're very good at showing the standard that you get your HMO to, like, and obviously I've been leaning in on your ear because of my project at the minute. How important is that everything is to a high standard?
Yeah, I guess we do a high standard for a number of reasons. There's very little, we don't ever really plan to do a flip. Now, if a flip comes along and it works, we'll do a flip. But we aim to hold everything we can to try and go after cash flow and then the kind of the long-term capital growth. So in terms of the long game, we like to have our property stripped right back and everything as new as possible. So it reduces maintenance and there's no surprises in the significant long run. But also, more importantly for us, we have to stand out from the crowd to drive the high rents and keep the voids down. So if you produce a good product, they'll flock to your product, but also they'll not leave as quick as maybe a middle of the road product. But equally, I've seen middle of the road products can work. It's just a different price point. Maybe you spend a little bit different, but for us, we want to stand out and get our rooms filled, get them filled quickly. And charge a premium price for the product and also reduce void periods. So if somebody leaves, for example, it's straight in.
Lisa loves a bit of funky wallpaper herself. Don't you, Lisa? I've seen some of your stuff as well. You're quite creative, aren't you?
The Airbnbs now, they were done by an interior designer at the 2 Airbnbs, but the other stuff I tried a bit of grass on the wall. I tried now I have to say what you were saying, Paul, about keeping your product high end. When I first started out, I suppose I was making a kind of a few mistakes and I wasn't putting really any money, very cosmetic kind of type money into the properties. And I was trying to cut corners where I could. And it's only kind of now that you'll start seeing the maintenance issues coming up on some of those HMOs. So yeah, I can see what you're saying about putting money into them. So as I was kind of learning, as I was going through, last year I did a 5-bed HMO with like all en suites or whatever, and could command a premium price. Had it filled within, I'd say, probably about 2 weeks of it going on the market. I had 2 rooms filled before, like when they just came in to view them, like young professionals, and it was just so much easier when the product is a lot better. And now it's very tempting not to put as much money and time into the property, because and doing grass on the walls that I was trying to do back in the day when I was testing stuff out. And I suppose, yeah, it was very tempting because there's a housing crisis, so like people will pay, sort of thing. But what I was finding was if your quality is kind of crap, they'll soon leave. Like they're going to get somewhere that, you know, probably the same price point for a better quality product, and they're going to leave. So yeah, I totally agree. Keep the quality up if you can.
Get the grass up on the wall. I must see about that in my one. I don't know if I'll put grass on it now, but we do have a feature wall. I have a feature wall coming. Can't wait to see it. It's going to be
property all behind it. Are you going to fill it with the Gap property sign?
Yeah,
is it?
I'm going to stick it up nice big. The dairy girls is massive, so big. We're gonna have a couple of murals up on the walls and things like that. No, we're not. In fairness, we're not going that detail. But look, no, it's important, Paul, because at the end of the day, suppose you're obviously raising investor finance to do these things, and you've got your own money as well. So look, it's really timing that. So you have to get that right. How important is that, Paul? Because look, if someone has invested with you and you know you showed your experience, you need to know your market inside out. You need to know exactly who's going to stay there, what are they going to pay, how long they're going to stay, and things like that. So, you know, that having that that kind of thought process from the outset is very important. How important do you think it is?
Yeah, I think it touches on a number of things. So you can try and build a bit of a brand. You know, you see even within Belfast, if you follow certain people on Instagram, you know, you see a picture and you don't even need to look who it is. You go, I know that is his or hers property or her HMO, because that's the way they do them. And you can almost build a wee bit of a sub brand in that. And that's what we're early in the game still on that. There's plenty of people way ahead of us. And that's what we're trying to do, you know, build consistency, and people know when we hire one of our rooms or let one of our rooms, you know what they get. But equally, when you start to build a strong product and something that looks smart on the socials and on your pictures, that sells itself, we find, to the investors. So you go to an investor and you've got a good, say, property pack, or, you know, online pack that you share with them. You know, as soon as you do a few before and afters, or even just an after, you know, showing off maybe your living room with all the mural, or, you know, the fancy feature wall and the TV and the open plan kitchen, and, you know, the fancy floor, and that sells itself to a point. It strikes you kind of as this guy knows what he's doing. And I think that's a big thing for the investor money. Certainly, if it was me investing with somebody, I'd like to know and get a feel for what they're doing. And the more you do, obviously, as well, you talk about knowing the numbers inside out. You get a feel when you even just go around your first, you know, get a first look at maybe your next property before you even buy it. Straight off the bat, you know, you have numbers in your head and you're running it through, and then you share that in an information pack that you're maybe putting out to investors, you know, for proposed investment. When you can start nailing down numbers quite much narrower, and know, you know, even the interest rate you're going to get when you mortgage it to back end, how long it's going to take, you know, and this is why I can offer you X% as an investor. That just sort of builds a lot of credibility and makes conversations maybe happen a little bit more. And even then, you know, if you have a quality product, you can, you know, maybe the investor wants to walk it with you. Say, look, here's one I finished last year. It's bringing in, you know, £400 or £500 a room, whatever. It's always filled in my void period in less than a week. And this is the same thing I'm going to do around the corner, and that's what, you know, I'm looking at investment for. Then, you know, that makes conversations easier. Sorry, never easier. To build those sort of contacts that you need to really accelerate your portfolio building.
And just Lisa, I suppose I've seen a couple of pictures of you with your boulder gloves on. You're not scared to get the hands dirty either. Like, you know, it's important.
You have to, like, so obviously don't do the real heavy kind of plumbing and electrician and all that type of stuff. But towards the end, like when it's time to kind of, you know, put up blinds and put up make up the beds or whatever it is. Like it just has to be done, because things like that, I direct labor most of my stuff. So it'll be, I bring in the plumbers, I bring in the electricians, I bring in the chippies, I bring in, but like none of them are going to ever want to, put up a blind sphere or put up the bed sphere or make the bed, because I provide linen and all that type of stuff. So yeah, all that type of stuff falls to me towards the end of the project. So
I
yeah,
get it.
no, I enjoy it, but it can be pretty stressful, because I suppose, as you know, Paul and Pauric, like when there's, you're paying interest on this money every week that goes by. You're conscious that you're paying interest, but yet you got no tenants coming in, and there would be a few tenants, like most of the tenants, obviously, that won't actually agree to take a room until the room is actually done. So you can't even get pictures up out there. So you're going to be another kind of at least a week, 2 weeks before you actually get tenants into the house, so it's always a kind of a squeaky bum time, where you're just trying to get it done as quick as possible so you can start the process of getting your tenants in.
Get the roller out and get on with it. And Paul, I suppose you've touched on something there. I know HMOs is a strategy we're covering tonight, for example, but flipping, and funny, I was doing a bit more training last weekend with Mark Dalton from the UK, and actually Mark touched on that flipping can be, a strategy that can be very difficult to grasp. You need to really know what you're doing. Now, there's some people who are very, very good at it, and look, there's some people that might undervalue the interior design aspect, because when you get into that, it's quite a lot of money. Is that something that you've done in the past, flipping property, or is that something that you're not really interested in?
At the moment, it's not our primary strategy. It tends to be maybe a second out or a third out on maybe an HMO project if things don't go well, or maybe you don't get granted the planning, for example. But thankfully that's never come to that. But at the minute, as I say, we're mainly building for cash flow to hold and the long-term capital growth. But as I say, I've a few good friends with, and they do very well at the flipping. It's just trying to grasp out the back end. If you've investors to pay for borrowing the money, it would cost the money. And then the tax man gets his hands stuck in quite a bit, and the capital gains is sort of being halved every year. So it just makes it harder, and by the time you maybe put your money in your bank and then go again, you can maybe be 30 to 50% down in what your actual profit was by the time everybody else comes and puts their hand in your pocket. So it needs to be, anytime I'm looking at flips, it's difficult to just make the numbers stack. Would you do a flip for 6 or 9 months and for 10 or 15,000 pounds? That's a lot of money, obviously, but for a lot of effort, and it may well be 30, 40, but you have to be aware that it might be 15 or 20 if things go south, and be prepared to be okay with that. But for me, it's not a strategy. It's not my number one strategy. HMOs and Airbnbs are probably further up the list. But certainly if something came along, I would never, at the right price. And I think just continuing to learn about flips, it's all about the purchase price. You need to be getting a fairly purchase price, and that's kind of where you make your money, or make a good chunk of your money on day one, and that de-risks it from what I can see. So it's a very good strategy, and I know some people that flip one a year and then try and keep 1 or 2 a year, and the flip pays for any money that you have to leave in those other deals, which is a perfect strategy. But it's just it's not my radar maybe.
Well, it's always good to have a numbers person in the audience. Lisa, of course, an accountant by trade, numbers inside and out. And flipping, I don't think it's a strategy you ever looked at, but I know we're just touching on it briefly here. But have you ever done a bit of flipping, or you kind of not really bothered?
It doesn't really work. I think flipping, it depends on your location. So I think, like, if you were in maybe Dublin and you found the worst house on the best street, and you got a really good deal, like maybe you got direct to vendor and you got a really good deal, and you put in money into the house, and I think there's money to be made, like in certain city locations. In Waterford City, it definitely doesn't work. Unless you can obviously get a really good deal, but there's a cap, like so in certain places there's just a cap on what you can get for a house, no matter what you're putting into it. Even if you put in gold stairs into it, there's a cap. So I think, like in the likes of, say, Dublin City, maybe Cork City, some of the bigger cities, and then obviously the likes of London and some of the bigger cities, then obviously in the UK, that can work really, really well if you get a really good direct to vendor deal. But I like, definitely it wouldn't work in like, say, down the south, down in Waterford anyway. And what I find works well is holding on to them and waiting for that long-term capital appreciation. But in the meantime, you're getting that really good cash flow, because the prices are pretty low. But the rental yields are pretty high in comparison. So no, flipping definitely I don't think is a great strategy right now down here. If we're in a situation where property prices are just shooting up, maybe if we got maybe another couple of big employers locate down the south maybe, and all of a sudden then the property prices were just like flying up, well then that it could work then. But no, I don't think we're in a market right now down here anyway where flipping would work well. It would be a different story now, as I said, if I was based up in Dublin maybe.
Yeah, that's very, very true. You're listening to Solid Foundations Property Podcast, of course. That's our special guest this month is Paul Kennedy, Paul from Amplify Property in Belfast. And, well, of course, don't forget, coming up later this month in February, we'll have the Northwest Property Meet on the 27th of February in beautiful Derry City in the Everglades Hotel. If you're new to property and you want to learn and get around like-minded people, of course, you can do that there. We've got loads of people who are at different stages in their journey as well. And Lisa, no doubt you'll have an event to look forward to in the next couple of months, I'm sure.
Yeah, I have to get around to that, but thanks for highlighting that I don't have a date set yet, Pauric. Thanks for that.
She's still in holiday mode, so we'll give her a month or two, Paul, to get back into it as well.
I just, in my defence, Pauric, I've just had knee surgery, so I'm hobbling around on the. Yeah.
Slagging you, Lisa. It's all right. It's okay.
That's my excuse, and I'm sticking to it. So, in terms of, we just maybe if we can move on about like HMOs, I suppose there'd be people listening to this podcast and maybe don't understand exactly what the HMO concept is, and I think I did all my property training, say, in the UK, and so I just bring that terminology over here. So, Paul, could you just explain a bit more, like, what is the HMO in general? What is the model? And what does it entail, basically?
Yeah, I think, speaking to some maybe not hugely in the know, it's probably what most people would term as, with the students. You go to university, or you send your kids to university, you stay loads of people in one house. And that's the basic strategy of you rent by room. So it's usually a big house, maybe 3, 4, 5, 6, maybe 9, 15. I don't know, some big HMOs there. But essentially you rent your room per person. Typically you can turn up with your clothes in your back and you can start living. So there'll be beds, there'll be a bit like an Airbnb maybe. The whole house is kitted out for you, and you can just start living. Tends to be, as I talked about earlier in the podcast, quite shorter contracts. And the idea is that it tends to try and be a house of like-minded people, so probably similar age range, similar stage in life and work commitments, etc., etc. And the idea is that they build a bit of a community in the house. Now, that's easier said than done. But essentially, an HMO, it's a house anyway, for certainly in Northern Ireland. I know it's different across in the mainland slightly, but here it's a house with 3 different people living in it that don't know each other and are kind of paying separate bills and tenancies. That would be classified in HMO. So technically, you can have a 2-bed HMO, and you wouldn't need an HMO license as well. Then you will need planning permission to change your property from residential to HMO. And then out the back end side, maybe when you've finished all your works, you will need to be granted an HMO license. So you have quite a few hoops and regulations to jump through.
Which are absolutely fantastic crack, by the way. I had such a blast over the last couple of months Seeing
I would just call it landlord tax. It's just another landlord tax. Let's be honest.
fingers crossed, and yeah. And look,
So
that
we don't have
you
HMO
don't have that in the
licenses
south
down
yet.
the south.
Wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
we don't have HMO licenses down the south. So do you tend to, I know once a house has a HMO license in the UK, that you're more or less away in a hack sort of thing, that is okay, right? Do you go for houses that already have a HMO license, or do you go for houses that were never HMOs and you're just trying to turn into a HMO?
Yeah, and I get that a lot, and I get it through my sourcing business. A lot of people see HMOs obviously high cash flow, and I think they maybe see all the work you have to put in at the start. If you make an HMO and want to talk about jumping the gun, and can you buy an HMO? You can. There's HMOs all for sale quite often, and quite often it's the ones out the bottom, the ones that have fallen in disrepair. Maybe the landlord's just tired. You will pay a premium for a property with an HMO license. You'll typically pay higher than bricks and mortar valuation on a property that has an HMO license. The HMO license does carry, it's essentially a business and goodwill. So for that reason, we do try to make HMOs. So buy a house in an area we know that will be granted, or a high chance it'll be granted planning for that. And as a result, obviously it's very cash intensive up front for a year or two. But ultimately, if you kind of do a full roll up from top to bottom on, buying a finished HMO versus making one, you will be typically better off in terms of less capital maybe in the deal if you make an HMO. But yeah, you do have to consider the cost of money for a year, and if that's either in your pocket or someone else's that you're paying interest on, that all has to be totaled up. And can't be forgot about.
Can you be applying for a license as you're doing the refurb work, or do you kind of just hope that you're going to get the license and then only go and apply for it once it's all finished?
Yeah, so up front, as soon as you buy the property, you can apply for planning. So the planning's the first bit. Like probably most things in the UK, certainly in Northern Ireland, it takes forever and a day, and it just seems to be getting slower and slower. You can't chase it, but it can be anything from like 2 months to 6 months for them to grant you. And I've heard horror stories of like 12 and beyond. But anyway, they grant you the license, and it'll be basically factual based. You should be able to predict within reason. Will you get that granted or not, unless there's some random outstanding thing. But there's a number of things you need to look for to ensure. Most streets in Belfast will not allow more than 10% HMOs on them. There's a few other areas that allow a wee bit higher density, and other areas you'll not allow them at all. So you just need to know that going in. So you can get your license. Like if you're fairly confident that you're going to get your license, or sorry, your planning, most people just crack on with the works, because obviously it's the house isn't doing anything unless you buy a house that's in decent shape. I suppose you could maybe try and let it out or keep the tenants in it, just the cash flow take over until you get it. But if you're fairly comfortable, you can crack on. Obviously, if you go down like all ensuite route, you are really putting all your eggs in one basket quite aggressively. And then outside of that, once you finish, they'll not come and grant you a license, or certainly not even consider you for a license until you're all finished. So you have to have like your fire doors on, your fire extinguishers on. It has to be a good product. You have to do all your tick boxes. There's about 8 or 10 items that you have to kind of do. And only then does the clock start ticking, and they have up to 12 weeks and grant you a license. So in that period, if you have a 4-bed, 5-bed, 6-bed, you're only allowed to put 2 people in it, because anything over 2 is a HMO, and you don't have your license yet. So the rush you'll see in anybody that's finishing HMO is just try and get it finished and get 2 people in it. And it won't make you money, but it'll certainly stem the flow and maybe, break even for those maybe 1-2 months until you get your license. So that's kind of.
Jesus.
Whereas I know, speaking in the mainland, a lot of guys they fill it straight away, and then almost you're obviously allowed to run it as an HMO while you're waiting. So it's just you've maybe done a year's worth of work, no rent, all cash, and then you have to wait another 2 or 3 months to try and get a license to get the thing filled with a full 5, 6, or 4 people in it. So yeah, it's a fairly intensive. We've got 3 all at this one stage where we're waiting, and there's no cash coming in, and you know what it's like at the end of the project. There's not much money down the sofa to keep. So it's a bit of a tight spot, but maybe in a month or 2 you'll be in much better shape once you get the refinance and stuff as well, and the tenants start to land into the rooms.
But just looking at that solution, and I know we spoke about it, Lisa, was that solution for the market. It is, suppose, it's critical in a way because there is a huge amount of empty properties lying about, and configuration is an aspect that can be done. And with the right, I suppose, team around you as an individual, if you're, you can do a lot. How important is that? Because stats are coming out of Northern Ireland, 21,000, I think it's 21,000 houses lying empty, or that could potentially be turned back into, HMO, or, a violette, or even family home at that, But in Ireland, it's quite significant numbers as well.
Yeah, no, it is. There's significant numbers, and I'd go into a property there now. I suppose I thought we had it bad, but we don't have any of this licensing minimum size requirements. I suppose we don't really have, especially if the house is under 4 bedrooms. So it's all about just what I look for anyway is enough for a double bed and an ensuite. So I've configured one house from being like a 4-bedroom house to being a 5-bed, all with ensuites. And it's all about just kind of like, going into the place with your plumber and working out, can we squeeze in a toilet here? Can we squeeze in, where are we going to put the 4-inch pipe? And it's all about kind of going in hands on and seeing how many bathrooms and how we can reconfigure the upstairs. It's easier in a newer house. So the latest one I did was, I think it was only built in like 1999 or 2002. So that type of work is actually a lot easier in a newer house. When it comes to being an older house, when you start knocking walls, and a lot of the internal walls are actually solid, and you just don't know what you're gonna come across, and your costs could end up kind of, being blown out the water. But yeah, what I've learned in the short space when I've been doing this is, I was starting out with like kind of 3 and 4 bedroom HMOs, and I learned quickly that there's demand there for HMOs in Southern Ireland. It's not just students. I don't do students, I do young professionals. And there's all different types of young professionals then. Like you've got your doctors and nurses, you've got your engineers who are coming into the pharmaceuticals, you've got your your blue collar workers then. And I suppose because there is such a demand, that I've just decided that I'm going to try going for a bigger house with more rooms in it. I know it's going to be more crowded, but I think the demand is there. And if I can go more higher end, where they've got like a nice high end bedroom, they've got a TV on the wall, ensuite, I might be able to attract kind of, better quality and better paying kind of tenants. And yeah, the last house seemed to have worked well that way. But yeah, it's definitely, I think it'd be one of the ways in which we can get ourselves out of this housing crisis, is that we do more of these HMOs, and there are more landlords that do them. Because in my mind, people will be saying, oh, but what about families? That's okay. There's plenty of landlords out there that only want to rent to families. Like, as I said, this isn't for the faint-hearted. I do this full-time. This is my full-time job. And like, I'll take on all the young single people who, I might have them moving in, and 6 months later they might be moving out. I'll take on all that work. But then there's other landlords out there who can manage the families. And I think if we can get more HMOs on board, that means there'll be less, more people coming into these houses, single people, and it'd be less people, take the pressure off then these family homes for other landlords to rent out to families. So I think HMO will be a really good strategy to help alleviate with this housing crisis.
Yeah, and that's very, very true, Lisa. So, as I say, and that's the thing as well. It's helping solve those problems that are across the market, and bringing good quality products to fulfill that market that there's currently. Look, we could chat ages about HMOs, the design, the different aspects. We had a great chat about it on today's podcast, of course. HMOs, house of multiple occupancy, co-living is another term for it. But hopefully, I think between Lisa and Paul, we got the full value of what exactly it is, how it works, what's the positives to it, what's the negatives to it, how you can get into it if it's a strategy you want to get into as well. But Paul, before we let you go, and before we finish this episode, of course, you have taken further steps as well. You've got a little accountability group in property as well, because for a long, long time, there was no training really in Ireland, in Northern Ireland, and everybody had to go to the mainland or the UK to get trained. And I know, Lisa, you were doing that as well. I did that, but Paul, you've come into this at a different viewpoint. You've decided to set up accountability group, and maybe just tell us about that before we let you go.
Yeah, and similar to yourselves, I've done some of the courses in England. We all know they're expensive, and if you go the right route, they're absolutely worth it. And just speaking in around in your own group, Pauric Northwest Property Meet, the Belfast Property Meet, just general investors in around Belfast and the Northern Ireland. A lot of those guys have spent good money and got very good training, so they've come back here. They're getting on well. They've got all the knowledge, or maybe kicking on, or some are just starting out. Sort of just mentioned, the continued sort of stories and noise I heard was, we don't need a big expensive course. We just need consistently, surrounded by like-minded people, to be encouraged to share knowledge, to push on, to pick each other up when you have a bad week. And it's on my mind for sort of 6-9 months. And then I just bit the bullet there in May time last year, and got the group up and running. So essentially, it's a very affordable price every month. We jump on. There's a Facebook group on a Sunday night. Everybody just pitch in. What's the 3 things you want to achieve this week? And that just helps you not drift from week to week to week. So for some people, it's literally like phone 3 estate agents. Never really pushed that. For other people, it's go and get private investment off social media and do a week long's worth of social media post. Other people's like, I'm getting my keys on Friday. I need to start speaking to builders. And throughout the week in the Facebook group, there's accountability, and you share wins and share, my plumber's let me down, and everybody, I've read this book, all that good stuff. And then Friday mornings we jump on a Zoom call at 6:30 in the morning. So most of the guys, still in full-time work. So jump on a call for an hour on Friday morning. You kind of feedback how you've got on. And it's not a stick beating exercise, but I think regularly, if you write something down or tell somebody you're going to do something, you're more likely to do it. And then on those Friday mornings too, we have about once a month we have a guest speaker. So we had Ruth Smith on. She was on here last time. And we have mortgage advisors, solicitors, stagers, Airbnb management guys on. So just to kind of help our knowledge aspect. And then once a month we'll jump on site. So we'll not jump on a Friday morning call. We'll actually go out on site in the evening. Actually last night we were on 2 sites, and then we went and got some dinner together. So just trying to build the social aspect of it too. So that group's just been growing, and it's been fantastic. And there's people from all walks and all corners of Northern Ireland jumping on that group, and a few from over the water actually as well. And it's just sharing and seeing people moving on. Some people, as I say, are well into property portfolio building. Some are just starting out, and a lot of us are somewhere in the middle. And it's just been it's been a really good group. And you see people making moves, and people have come on and says, "Oh, last year or two, I've said I was going to do this, and now that I'm in such a group as this, then I really am, and I get encouraged." And we all know property is very lonely, and that was I see it at times. Other than my wife and maybe a few people I know, like yourself, Pauric, and others, you could say I got a below market deal today, and your average friendship group's going to go, "What?" There's nobody to celebrate that with. Equally, when you lose a deal, nobody really understands. If you had a really good deal lined up and you lose it, it can be quite lonely, or nobody cares, or and that can knock you for 6 for maybe week after week after week. Whereas the idea of the group is pick yourself up on a Friday, dust yourself off. Somebody in the group maybe 2 weeks ago lost the deal, and behold, they've a deal lined up, and they're kicking on. So yeah, there's various aspects of the group that really work for all of us, and collectively maybe. We push on and do get moving and get stuff done, maybe is the best way to put it.
Hello, Paul. That's fantastic. And I think you'll agree, Lisa, it's refreshing to hear that as well, because you all need a little bit of accountability, and you all need a good kick up the backside to at times, don't you? Huh?
Yeah, you sure do, Paul. I might join your group. I've just come back from Australia, and yeah, I've definitely kind of done that thing where I'm just coasting right now because I've just had the knee surgery and I'm just coasting right now. And this is my first actual bit of work I've done since I got back. So yeah, I might join your group, Paul.
Well, look, guys, it's been brilliant. Thanks so much for joining us on this edition of Solid Foundations podcast. Some exciting news from Lisa coming shortly. I think you've got some projects. We'll not say too much, and yeah, I've got another project in the pipeline as well. Really looking forward to that. It's a 9-bed HMO, and all hands to the pump. We've one just finishing nearly. We're into the nicer end. We're getting things. We're getting the place tidied up and painted, and yeah, so it's all good. There's lots happening. So guys, I'm going to put all your socials on the podcast just below. You can check out Paul Kennedy as well as the beautiful Lisa O'Reilly and her dodgy leg, but she will be back. She'll be all right next month. So for myself, Pauric and Lisa, thanks very much for listening to this edition of the Solid Foundations